It's 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and kick us off. Um, let's see. Yeah, it looks like we've got at least a fair number of folks who have joined so far. So I'm Megan Weber. I'm an aquatic invasive species extension educator, and one of the folks behind the Zebra Mussel Safari program. Thanks to everyone who is able to make it, and we'll have a recording. I know times don't always work for everyone, and that's totally fine. So this is being recorded. You can come back and reference all of what we have to say in the future, and if you weren't able to make it live, then you're going to be seeing this at some point in the future as well. This is the first time we've done a kickoff webinar like this for this program, and I'm hoping that it helps kind of put the full context of the program all into one place, have a little bit of extra training, maybe a different way to share information, and be helpful for those of you who have already been a part of Zebra Mussel Safari, as well as for those who are new and just kind of learning what you're getting yourselves into. Um, I'm going to kick things off with a program overview first. And, just briefly for the history of the program, Zero Safari has been around since 2021, and it's gone through a few phases. 2021 was kind of when we first started piloting this program. There were only 4 lakes that were involved at that time, and it's kind of grown steadily then. So if you've been here from the beginning, then you remember Meg Dorr and myself were the first two who started working on this and piloting it. As we worked through that, we got to a point where we were able to bring a grad student into that project, and that was Sawyer. So those of you who joined, sometime between 2023 and 24, you probably got to know Sawyer. And then during that time, you also maybe heard about at least Dr. Alex Badges, who's on. I'm going to get to our introductions of the full program team still, but just to kind of see where that went. And a lot of the history of this program came from questions about what zebra mussels are doing. So I'll get to more of that, but to kind of give that overview, this is kind of the current core program team. There's other people who um, are involved in different spots, but I'd say this group is probably most of us. You all have probably seen emails from me. So I'm the extension educator behind this program, and Michelle Isaacson is our program coordinator. You may see emails from her as well moving forward. And then Alex Badges is the man behind the app where you submit all of your data. And also has done a lot of work on the modeling. He was one of Sawyer's advisors during her time as a grad student. So is involved both kind of on like how the data gets submitted in a way that's usable, and then also has done some work and mentorship on, what things can be done with that in the future. So I had mentioned kind of where this program came from and why we started it up. And really, I think of it as a goal of kind of bridging this gap in research with long-term monitoring. I'd say one of the biggest challenges when we think about questions around zebra mussels, we see lots of changes in population density over time, and we know that they flux and you get these highs and these lows. We don't know a lot about the trends behind that and what leads to those changes, what leads in some cases to like success of a population where you see in some lakes these really dense populations, and in other lakes that have maybe been invaded for the same amount of time, um, you see something different. We do know some things about like water chemistry and such and what tends to support a zebra mussel population, but also, like how all those things play together along with many other variables, what all of that can mean. So one of the challenges with trying to answer those questions is it requires long-term data. And I'd say funding sometimes maybe doesn't support having long-term programs like this. Would you agree with that, Alex? So lots of time you get funding, but it's short term and you might be able to get more to kind of tack on. But this is a really great place where like as an extension program, we can kind of step in and have that data available that then future researchers are able to use and be a part of answering some of those big questions. So that's one of the big things that we're hoping to do with this program. Um, as a part of that, there's a few different roles within participating. So the kind of the three that I have tagged out is the AIS Detectors program. So we're the partnership between Extension and the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, or you could refer to us as the university role within the program. There are lake coordinators, and we would consider that the volunteer point person on a participating lake. So that's the person, that's the primary point of contact between us at the university and all of the people on the lake who will perhaps have samplers out at their locations or perhaps will be submitting data in. There's a couple of different ways that relationship can play out, and we'll get into that as we go through some of the training. And then there's also the participating residents. So these are the folks who are perhaps allowing samplers to be hung from docks near their properties, or they may also be submitting data. And again, it's up to each individual lake group how they wish to structure that. So it's not going to be the same for all of you. And all that we care about is that the data ultimately comes in. So who on the lake is submitting it is whatever works best for that lake group is totally fine with us. Um, we have a general timeline for the year that we've kind of laid out. And this is a little bit different than in previous years. So if you've done this for us for a number of years, you might see some things have shuffled a little bit. But this is kind of what we're looking at as we kind of continue to grow and develop this program moving forward. So kind of January to March, we're in that period now, just wrapping up our recruiting period. So bringing a few new lakes into the program this year, registering, making sure any lake that wants to keep doing it, who had participated in previous years, that we have you in the list of someone that we're continuing to communicate with and should expect data from. Into again, March is the kickoff webinar, which you're enjoying with us right now. This is the primary change. April to May is when there's going to be a local condition survey sent out. So if you've participated with us in previous years, you remember doing that towards the end of the year. Watch for that now in the springtime. May is when you can expect the samplers to arrive. If you need either replacements or if you're a new participating lake, those will be shipped to you. If you have yours from last year, then you don't worry about things arriving. And they should get installed at the end of the month, into the first week of June. Generally, like the Memorial Day period is kind of when we're looking at for installation. June through August is kind of hands off. The plates are just sitting in the water and we're waiting for any present mussels to decide that that's where they want to settle out. So doing some checks on them. We've operated this program in some pretty high drought years and water levels can fluctuate. So just checking to make sure that they're still underwater, and or aren't sitting on the bottom now because water levels have dropped too much, or if water levels tend to be rising, maybe adjusting them a little bit so they're still about 2 feet below the surface. But really we try to be pretty hands off during that period and just kind of let them be there and let the mussels find them and settle on them if that's where they choose to settle. September is when plates tend to get removed, and that's when we're asking for that end of the year data to come in. October to November is data processing time. And I know for those of you, again, who have been participating over this past year, there's an asterisk there because we're still working out some kinks with the software that we use to process the data. So for this year, it's kind of extending into 2026. But our goal is for that processing to happen in October and November, and by December to be able to have annual reports. So I know for this past year, that timeline's getting extended. But I think we'll be able to work through that process and hopefully get some stuff out here before too long. And then 2026, I'm going to keep fingers crossed that all goes very smoothly, and we should be able to stick to that timeline then for this upcoming program year. The first thing that I'm going to talk about for those who are lake coordinators is selecting the sites at your lake. So I'm just going to kind of step through all the different phases of the program, have a wrap up at the end, and then we have time for Q&A at the end too. So if you have questions at the end, feel free to ask them, and I am happy to answer those. But we'll start with thinking about selecting sites at your lake. And we kind of think about this in maybe these numbers are almost like a hierarchy of the things that we would want you to think about as you're trying to place the samplers. The first one is that you need folks on the lake who are willing to either grant access to you to hang the samplers there. or willing to hang the samplers themselves. So first of all, need to have willing people on the lake who want to be a part of this. The second part is there needs to be a minimum of 5 locations. So we want 5 spots around the lake. It doesn't matter, whether you're on a large lake or a small lake. We want a minimum of 5. I'd say like 5 to 10 is probably the ideal number of samplers, anywhere in that range. 5 is totally fine. So don't feel like you're an underachiever if that's what you have. That works. But that I'd say that's probably a good range of samplers. Um, the next piece, and this one is really important, and I will talk more about that local condition survey coming up, is that they're being placed somewhere where there's someone knowledgeable about the local conditions, who can answer questions to that survey. And then finally, you want them to be spread approximately evenly around the shoreline. So the first 3 are the most important, and those 3 should be satisfied before worrying about how even they are across the lake. Because again, like it's more important to have places you can put them, and that you're meeting the minimum numbers that we need, and then also that there's the complementary data around it, before we worry about how even the spread is. So just do your best. And some lakes have varying levels of development. So if there's just a big gap along the lake where there just aren't any docks to hang, then that's okay. That's just the way that that lake is, and it's fine. Just do the best that you can with the layout of the lake and the participation options that you have there. I'm going to show 2 examples of existing lakes. These are graphics from reports that Sawyer sent out. I think this is a 2024 report, but just you can kind of get an idea, like the shape of the lake and where samplers have been placed. So this is Big Lake in Sherburne County, and you can see they have 5 samplers there, pretty well evenly spread around the lake. And here's one more example. Here's Lake Johanna. They have a few more. And you can see there's a couple of spots where there's some that are closer together than others, and that's fine. If that's how things lay out, that's totally okay. And they have more than 5 samplers here too, and that's fine as well. I'd say if you have like actual neighbors, like people who live right next to each other, then maybe avoid that. But if they're kind of close and that's just the best that you can do, then that is fine. Okay. And then when you get your sampling plates ready to go and you're going to put them out there, this is what they're going to look like. So we have 3 plates in our samplers. It's a little bit different than some of like the typical early monitoring builds you'll see that have 4. It's fine, but just for the ones that are going to be submitting data here, we want them to have the 3, and they need to all have the same number. So if you happen to have older versions of this, we trialed a 2-plate style of this early on. If you still have those, let us know so that we can get you the 3-plate ones, because in the end, the total number gets put together for a location. And if some have 2 and some have 3, then those numbers aren't going to represent things the way we want them to. So it's important to have the 3 plates in this specific size, in order to make all the data match up across the program. When you get this, the rope will also be marked. I think we've been using zip ties and kind of tighten them real close onto that rope. And that's marked at the 2-foot mark. So what you can do when you're putting the sampler into the water is just kind of put it down until that zip tie is at the surface of the water. And then you're good to go. And then you can kind of really quickly visualize, where that is. And the goal then is kind of like it's uniform across the program about how deep the plates tend to be. You'll want to make sure to attach it securely to your dock, and have it as far away from areas that tend to have disturbance as possible. So like if you have a boat that's going in and out, maybe try to put it on the opposite side of the dock from where the boat lift is or where you typically dock your boat, things like that. Those plates are going to stay in place until the 2nd or 3rd week of September. And then that's when the activity kind of starts to happen and plates get pulled, and we'll be asking for data about that. And we'll get into that end of the season process later. And then, as I mentioned earlier, throughout those summer months, you'll just kind of check regularly, just go out, take a look. And if that zip tie is still at the water surface, all is good. Otherwise, the goal is to not pull them in and out of the water. So just let them hang and do their thing. Okay, I had mentioned the local condition survey. So this is something that will be going out in April. What happens is I'm going to send the link to the lake coordinators. So if you're one of the lake coordinators, you're going to get the link to the survey. And there's two ways to handle this. Um, Either the local coordinator can connect with each of the local residents that have plates at their locations, collect the data on their behalf, and you can submit it for them. Or you can just send the link out to all the people who have samplers hanging from their docks and they can fill the survey out on their own. I will help, track what information we have in. So if data hasn't come in yet, we'll ask the lake coordinators to try and follow up and make sure that that data gets sent in and all the surveys get submitted for all the locations. So this is the part that I had mentioned that it's new. We're going to send this out before sampler plates get shipped or deployed. So if you're a new participating lake, it's important to get this filled out because we'll only ship out samplers for the number of locations that we have local survey data for or the local conditions data for. So you'll want to make sure folks are getting that completed so that we can get you the right number of samplers. And same, this should be completed before if you have your plates before they get deployed as well. The kinds of information that we're looking for here, we'll ask questions about like the typical frequency of like chemical treatments or types of disturbances like boating, swimming, things like that. Your general sense of what the plant community makeup is around the plate. So is there a lot of submerged plants or emerged things like cattails, plants that float on the surface? And we're just asking for your rough percentages. It'll say this in the survey. We are not expecting you to do some kind of like in-depth survey of the area and to give us exact percentages. We found that people tend to know the area around their docks and can give like pretty decent estimates of what the plant community is like around there. So it's just rough percentages that we're asking for there. And then same, we're asking about what the lake bottom is like. Is it rocky? Is it sandy? Is it mucky? Things like that. So you'll get that in April. And the questions are phrased on like how often do you typically have chemical treatments here? Like, do you typically treat once a year, every other year, multiple times a year, never, things like that. So you'll get questions that are kind of in this like in a typical way. Um, what do you see? Okay, that's a local conditions survey. The next piece now, what we're getting into here is what happens at the end of the year. We added this in last year is a way to record water hardness, which is something we're really interested in because one component of hardness is calcium. And calcium is an important mineral when it comes to zebra mussels because they're dependent on it to create the shells that they live in. So what we found is these water test strips. So this is a picture of what they look like, and we'll ship these out at the end of the year to distribute to each of the folks with we're submitting data on. So again, like local coordinators will get all of these, and then it's up to you. If you're the one who's removing all the plates at the end, then you would just use them at each location. If the volunteers are submitting their own photos from each location, then we'll just ask you to make sure they get this test strip too. So once it's time to remove the plates, it's just like a little paper test strips, like if you've ever had a home aquarium or a pool or something like that. It's the same idea. It's just a little paper thing and you swirl it around in the water. And then when it comes out, you give it a couple of seconds and then you match the little pad. Will change colors to the little squares that you can see on the packaging. And you'll just match it up and it'll tell you what kind of bucket of hardness you fall into. They're a great tool because they're very affordable to send out to a whole bunch of different places and they're really easy to use. So this is the best tool that we've found in terms of getting data in from volunteers all across the state. It is, broad bucketed data. So there's only 5 points along the line of like 0 to I think 425 ppm. So we're just kind of effectively pacing you into a bucket of like approximately like what's the hardness like of this lake or of the site, I guess, that you're at. Okay, the next thing that you're going to do is photograph the plates once you've pulled them out. So when we're thinking about the photographing side, and again, like this will depend on which lake you're on and how they're running it on that lake. It might be the local, or sorry, the lake coordinator who's doing this work, or it might be the person who lives where these plates were deployed. So this information for whoever is taking photos, this is for you. The things that you want to do, um, allow the plates to dry completely. Um, if they dry quickly within a couple of hours, that you can take photos right then and there. If you want to let them sit for a day or two, that's fine. It's trying to find a sweet spot between having completely dry plates, but not so dry that the mussels have died and started to open up. So you want them to still be closed up and alive when you're photographing them. But the dryness helps a lot in terms of being able to pick the mussels out of the photos. Um, as you're photographing and disassembling, it's very important that you keep track of which plate is which. So is this the top, the middle, or the bottom? And then which surface is which? So was this the upper surface or the lower surface of each plate? So just think about that in advance as you're pulling things apart, how you're going to lay them out or label them so that you can keep track of that. The other piece before taking pictures of the plates is to make sure that you've removed all of the hardware and the spacers. So in that picture, you saw the little white pieces in between each of the plates. That's just a chunk of PVC pipe. Make sure those come off before you're taking photos. Um, the good photos are a very important part of having really good data. So here's kind of our list of the do's and the don'ts as you're taking photos. So take your time, make sure that everything is lined up well. Don't try to not rush through this to make sure we're getting the highest quality photos we can. As we've been working and troubleshooting the software that we're using, I think one of the things that we've really learned is like the most consistent we can get these photos to be as they come in, the better the computer counting tool we have is going to be at getting accurate data. Take your time. Again, allow the plates to dry completely. I have a picture showing up to kind of illustrate why that's so important, but make sure the plates are dry. Um, you want to fill the entire frame with the photo template. So you get on an 8.5 by 11, like office paper size sheet of paper, you get this little template with a square. You want that sheet of paper to fill the entire photo as much as you can. So without cutting anything off and without adding a bunch of extra background, fill that up as best you can. Take the photos from directly overhead. So you want it to be kind of flat above, not angled. So, and that, if you fill the frame, that should do that. You shouldn't have excess. And then before you submit them, do a quick double check, pull them out of your camera roll on your phone and do a quick zoom. Make sure they're sharp and in focus. Those things are going to be really helpful in making sure that the software that we use to process the plates can pull things out as best as possible. The things to avoid would be so try to not include harsh shadows. So you're looking for nice soft light. If the light coming in is really hard and it casts really dark shadows across the plate, that can be really confusing to the software. Um, Also, don't leave on any of the hardware or the spacers on the plates. That both helps make it consistent, but also, the spacers, those little white pieces, they add this three-dimensional element to it, which can again like make it a little bit weird when you're trying to process in that software. And I know it feels weird taking the spacers off when they have mussels attached to them, and it feels like you're losing information that's there. And I just want to reassure you that that's okay because everyone is doing it across the whole system. So I know, especially when there's not a lot of mussels and it feels like when you take that spacer off, you're removing so much of the information. It is fine. That's just kind of caked into how the data will come in. So um, don't feel bad about it. Go ahead and remove the spacers, even if there's mussels attached. Um, the other thing to do is to avoid too much extra background. I'm going to show two examples of some really good photos we have in. So here's one example, and you can see what that photo template looks like if you're new to the program. here. So this is the template. Again, it's like an office sheet piece of paper. You can see this person's done a really good job of filling the frame with that photo. The light is perfect. There's like almost no shadow here. Things are really nice and crisp and in focus. So this would be a really good photo and pretty easy for that program to process. Here's one more example, and this one I included because there's like other stuff on this plate. You can see like there was probably some algae growth. There's some snails crawling around on here, and that's okay. But again, like they've done a good job of filling the frame. No harsh shadows, like really easy to see where the mussels are. Maybe hard for me to zoom in on the PowerPoint, but like when I zoom in, like it's pretty easy to tell that like right here is actually these are snails and these are mussels. So like really nice clear photos here. I'm going to go on and show some photos to try to avoid. I will disclaimer with this and say they're real photos. And if you see a photo that you took in here, it is absolutely okay. One of the nice things about like getting to see the photos as they come through is it helps us learn like what are the things that we need to be explaining a little bit better. So if your photos here, it's fine. Don't worry. We're using it to learn and that's totally okay. The first one, and this template's a little bit different because this photo came from one of the early pilot phases, but this is where we learned how important it was to let the plates dry. So this would be a photo to avoid because the plate's still wet. And I want to show you how different it is and why it's so important that the plates come in dry because this is what that exact same plate looks like when it was dry. And you can see how much easier it is to see all those little tan specks on that dry plate than when they're dark and there's reflections from the moisture. So this is why it's really important to let them get dry because it makes it so much easier to pick out the differences between mussel and not mussel. Okay. Let's see, some of the other ones to try to avoid. So here's an example. And again, this is a slightly different template. This is from when we were in a different phase of the project, but try to avoid where, things are getting cut off. So we're missing a little bit of the plate in this photo here. So make sure, again, everything that needs to be in the picture is there. Um, Here we've got just a little bit too much background. So this one would be better if you focus in on the plate. The other thing I'll say about this is make sure that as you're filling the frame, that you're doing it by like getting closer to it. Don't take the photo and then crop it. One of the things that we've learned is that like the pixel counts in the photo are important for the way the software works. So if all you do is crop the image down, there's going to be fewer pixels there, and that can be confusing to that software. So it's really important that the photo itself, without any cropping, has done as best it can. Get your phone as close as you can to it and fill that up. So try to avoid extra space like this. Um, Here's one again. Now this one's taken at an angle. Again, at this time we actually asked people to take photos at an angle at this phase when we were using this template. But sometimes photos do come in at a bit of an angle. So we want to try to avoid that. And you can kind of tell because the template fills the frame at the bottom of the picture, but at the top it doesn't. So again, getting your phone kind of like as parallel as you can to that surface is going to be really helpful to good photos. Um, this one, we've got some pretty heavy shadows. So you can see kind of down here and even where the mussels are on the plate, there's a lot of shadows and that can make it look like duplicates and can make it hard to see things. So try to avoid heavy shadows like this if you can. And then this plate looks to me like it probably got left out to dry too long. This is a lot of mussels. You can hardly even see the plate on it, but you can also see that all of the mussels on it are gaping open. Um, so that means that they've died. So it was my guess is this got left out to dry too long and the mussels died, and that's why they're opened up. When the mussels start to die and gape open, it can confuse the software and it can think that each half is one mussel versus when it's closed, those will look like it'll only count it as one. Versus here, my guess is kind of every time you see like these two halves, it's going to count that one mussel as two. Okay, and then let's see. A couple more. Here we've got a glare that's kind of obscuring a part of the plate, so try to avoid the heavy glare as well. I'd say that glare would probably be okay if it was only on the template and not on the plate. But where it is here on the plate, that'll probably wash out some of the information that the computer software is trying to get at. And here we have a washer that got left on, and then here there's a spacer that got left on, and also some fingers in the view as well. So this is one of those examples where I said I know it feels really weird to take that spacer off when it has a lot of mussels that are attached to it, and you're left with what feels like a lot fewer mussels than you actually had. So again, like reassurance that that is okay. We'll take whatever's on the plate itself is what we're looking for. Okay, that's the end of the photo submission part. The next piece is entering your data. So there's actually maybe three different ways to handle this kind of data submission. And well, maybe this is the case for the local condition survey as well. But one way that this can happen is that lake coordinator is responsible for just collecting all of the plates, doing all of the water hardness, and taking the photos and submitting all of the data. That's one way that you can operate this program on the lake that you're working on. That's totally fine. Another way that you could do this is the coordinator is just helping to make sure that everything gets in, but the local residents where the lakes are hanging from their docks are the ones who are actually taking the water hardness results, pulling the plates, letting them dry, photographing, and submitting their own data. That is also totally okay. Also, you might do a combination. So maybe some people want to submit their own data and some people don't. And the lake coordinator is going to do some, but not all. That's totally fine too. So the main thing is that it all gets into us. But the way in which, each lake organization chooses to implement it is totally fine. So up to you how you're going to do that on your lake. I would just say for the lake coordinators, just make sure that you're communicating with the folks who are participating on your lake, which method you all have decided to use out there. When you're submitting the data, you're going to get a link to this, but we have this submission app, and this is the one where we can send all of our thanks over to Alex because he's done all of the programming and build behind this. But I think we have this to a point where it actually is easy to use. When I say it, it's gone through many different iterations, and especially with this last update, I think Alex did a really great job of just making it so like there's information that's pre-filled when it's needed to be. Everything can get submitted all at once for each location. So I think it's gotten to be pretty streamlined. There's plenty of instructions. This is just a quick screen grab from the very top of it. But again, when it's time to start submitting this, I'll send you the link out to this app. And you'll just use your phone and submit photos direct from your phone through this submission app, and we'll get to it then. Okay, the last bit that I have with just some closing thoughts and last bit of instructions that maybe didn't fit underneath any of the other headlines. One of the big things we're trying to do is to avoid data gaps. So throughout the season, the individual lake coordinators are going to have access to a tracking sheet to be able to see which locations we have what information from. So one of the roles of that lake coordinator is to, help ensure that the data that we need is coming in from the lake. So they can kind of check that and see, which of the folks who are participating on the lake with them still have things come in and can do the communication with them to make sure that that information is coming in. When there's data gaps, so if a local condition survey doesn't come in, or if even like a question gets skipped on it, or we're missing the hardness, or photos can't come in for whatever reason, it can have negative implications for our ability to use that data in some of the models that might get used moving forward. So there's different ways to handle that, but what it oftentimes means is that entire row of data gets cut out and doesn't feed in, because if it has one gap, there's no way to kind of fill that information in, and it can't match things up accordingly. So really important to have complete data sets for each site. There are things that come up sometimes, and that is okay. Whether it's, the plates, there was a big storm and the plates got destroyed or got knocked off of their location or whatever it might be. If things like that happen, that's okay. I'd also say if something like that does happen and the plates end up on the bottom of the lake for any reason, let us know because the plates are meant to take in data as it relates to new mussel settlement. If the plates come in contact with the lake bed, that allows for existing adult mussels to translocate onto the plates, and that's not the same type of data. So we'd want to have that information. It might mean for that year that that site just can't get used. And that's okay. Things like that happen. And that's again why we ask for, multiple sites across the lake and we get multiple years along the way as well. But doing your best, to avoid those gaps wherever we can means that we can actually use the data and the hard work that you're doing. They can actually, go and become a part of any modeling that gets used with this in the future. The other thing I want to make sure you're aware of is there's this coordinator website that has a guide for you. I'm going to click here and open it up just so that you can see. Hopefully, at least if you're a coordinator, you've seen this. If you're not one of the lake coordinators and you're a volunteer or have plates hanging from your location, you're absolutely welcome to explore this page as well. But it just has this quick guide with some information. An overlay again. I talked about the roles and responsibilities of each group is here. There's this coordinator guide that kind of helps give you tips about what to do along the way, has the instructions in there. You'll also get emails from us when it gets time to like do each of these tasks with that reminder. So don't worry about, having to remember it all on your own. You'll get emails from me or Michelle, or we have a departmental email as well. So you'll see an email from, one of us that gets you those reminders along the way. This is also where you can track what information has come in. So there's this sheet here that we kind of anonymize the addresses where things are happening, and then you can kind of track if we have information or not. So you can see in real time what still needs to come in, as well as links to the two types of information we're looking for in case you need to pull that. The webinar is going to end up right here after we record it. And we also have a video training series that has kind of shorter, quick explanations for each of the tasks along the way that you can review. I'll get to that as well. We have an FAQs question or section here. So if you have questions, there might be an answer to it already here. And this one we added for fun because lots of time people find other organisms that have chosen to live on the plates as well. And we get questions about like, what is that? So, if you find something strange on your plate, you can come here and you might be able to figure it out from these photos. And if you can't figure it out here and it's something that we don't yet have here, feel free to send us a picture and ask. And maybe we will add your photo on here as well for other people to learn from. So that's that coordinator website. Um, let's see, I already mentioned in the site that we have this video training series. So again, kind of each step along the way, you can watch a quick video and get a refresher on what you're supposed to be doing there. Okay, this is the last piece. Is the coordinator sign up form. So this is kind of your confirmation of like, yep, we're doing Zebra Mussel Safari this year. It will tell us if you need new samplers sent your way, and if so, how many, so that we kind of know what all we're shipping out. If you see your lake name in this list here, you have done this, and this task is done. If you do not see your lake name here, then either grab this QR code or this link and add yourself to the list so that we can be sure that that you're a part of it as well. And we'll kind of send communications out from that list moving forward once we know for sure who all says like, yep, we're in and we're going to do it for this year. Okay, that's the end of what I had for all of you. If you, we have time for Q&A now. So if you have questions right now, ask them. But if you don't think of them and you need to reach out later, you can email me and I'm happy to answer questions along the way. And I guess I'll say if Alex or Michelle had anything to add that I missed, feel free to chime in. Pat, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you for those pictures of the plates because once in a while I didn't know. But last year I had so many mussels on one plate, I had to dry them. I bet I dried them too long. And that's not good because they really start to smell. But you did mention, yeah, you did mention the plate drying. So this coming year, I should look at the plates drying, not the mussels drying. Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The main thing is like you just don't want that like all that shininess so that it's easy to see the difference between like muscle and plate. So yeah, the muscles don't have to like dry out and die. We just need it to
Okay.
not be shiny.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
My husband will be very happy about that. Our garage
I
smelled for
I
days.
bet. Oh my goodness. Was that one of yours? But that was a lot of muscles.
It was no, that one wasn't.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Because
that looks like it probably
I
would smell.
I do square mine off a
Okay.
lot better. But another thing is that we had some really bad storms and we had a lot of agitation.
Oh,
And
yes.
I had two of my samplers unscrew. So
Yes.
we talked about that last year, but how have you solved that issue?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. You were not the only ones that had that problem. So yeah, 2025 was a bit of a stormy year, I think, because multiple lakes across multiple parts of the state had this exact same problem where that like bottom nut came off. So whether you need new plates or not, watch, you are going to get a shipment because everyone is going to get new nuts to put on the bottom that have like a nylon locking on them,
Okay, a
and that
locking
should
nut.
help them hold in place better. So everyone will
Yay!
get new nuts and use those instead of the ones that you have for people who are reusing plates. Yeah, thank you for asking
Wonderful.
that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Jay,
Yeah, we're going to be new to this up on Lake
great.
Miltona, and excited. I think we'll get 10 at least, or a large lake. But my question is, I know the plates need to be 2 feet below the water. Is there a recommended target depth? Because we'll have some docks that will have 5 feet of water at the end of them, and we'll have others that will be considerably deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where that zip tie on the rope will come in. So there's going to be that zip tie on the rope and it'll be marked at 2 feet. So all of the plates should hang 2 feet below the water's surface, regardless of the depth.
So if somebody's got, 10 feet of water at the end of
Yep.
their floating system, that's fine. And because I'm
Yep.
thinking too, some people have got, 100 feet of dock out. Do they want it in the 3 foot zone or further out from shore as well? I guess, is there a distance from shore that you're looking for too?
No, I think we've just kind of given general guidance like near the end of the dock and then like the consistency is depth from the surface is what we're
Okay,
looking for.
great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Okay, I see a question. Let's see, from Dan. Have you ever seen lake hardness vary within a given lake? On my lake, all the tests showed the same value, which makes sense. Makes me wonder if they're needed at every dock location. So in general, they've been pretty similar. There have been some locations where maybe one will be different. And again, like the water test strips do have like pretty big buckets. So like a pretty decent range of hardness will all fall into one bucket. So you probably won't see huge variability. Um, but it does happen sometimes where one location is different than another. And yes, that is that when that variability is there, it is important to have it. And also the way it gets tagged, and Alex is going to correct me if I'm wrong about the way I'm saying this, but the way that it gets tagged when Alex ultimately uses this to model, there's a difference between things that get tagged as like whole, like applying to like lake level versus site level. So knowing that this is more precise site level data has meaning as it relates to how it feeds into that model. Great. And let's see, Teresa is wondering if we are reusing equipment, should we add a zip tie at the 2 foot mark? And if so, do we measure from the top of the top plate? Yes. Yeah, Teresa, if you're reusing equipment and either like it came untied, you want to make sure the zip tie is still in the same spot or you needed a new rope, Yeah, add that zip tie. It should be 2 feet from the top of the top plate. Are there any other lingering questions out there? You can feel free either type it in chat or if you use, there's a button that says raise hand. If you do that, then we can you can just speak up and ask.
Okay, we were talking about up to 10 plates, but when I think about that, that means 30 pitchers and 30, no. I don't know. That's that's a big quest, and I don't know if it's going to solve any more information for you than if we even had 5 plates or 8 plates. But we're a large lake at Pelican, so
Yeah, I'd say it's up to you and what works for the lake coordinators is I think the important thing. As long as we have a minimum of 5, then that's great. Sometimes it's nice, like if you have 6 or 7 and like something happens to one, then there's that backup so we can still have that minimum number on the lake.
that's a good
Um,
idea.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
don't worry about it being 10. Like as long as we have a minimum of 5, then that's the key thing that I think we're looking for. And yeah, if you're a lake where, one person is doing all of the photographing and such, I can I can see that feeling like a lot too.
Well, I'm hoping Jane will be taking over. Thank
Yep.
you.
And I'll add too, if especially for like those who are participating, you're new to it and you want to start with a smaller number to, get a feel for it and see how much work it is. And then next year when you do it, you could request an extra like set or two of plates and we'll send them out. If you're like, we have room for more and we'd really like to add 2 more on, we can certainly accommodate that too.
Okay, thanks so much.
I'll give it just a few more seconds for questions, either raised hands or chat, and but otherwise, we can let folks go too. All right, wonderful. Yes, thanks, Jay. We're excited to have Lake Miltona joining us too. I think then, unless I see anything as I'm saying the final words, it sounds like we've got everything covered. Really appreciate you joining, those who could. Please feel free to share this for those who are lake coordinators. You're welcome to share this, the recording once it comes out with others on the lake who are participating, whether they're just curious about what all is going on or if they're going to be submitting data. Either way, feel free to share it. We'll post it onto YouTube and we'll send you a link. I'll just give a warning, it won't be immediate. We will take the time to transcribe so you have closed captions on the video as well. So give us a little bit of time, like a week or so, and we'll get the email out to everyone. And you can, watch the recording as needed. You can come back and reference it later this year when you get to any of those parts. But yeah, hope this was helpful in giving some extra context and views and thoughts along the way. And thank you so much to all of you for being a part of Zebra Mussel Safari. We really appreciate all of your efforts and the ability to have all this cool data to work with moving forward.